So I guess start by telling us why an E39 M5.
So the original inspiration, when I was in 6th grade, my father gave me Alex Roy's book, The Driver. And so that was like tailing all of his like gumball adventures. And his car of choice was the E39 M5. He had a 2000 Avis Blue. And I remember at like such a young age, like I was like 12 years old. And like it hadn't fully set in yet, but I knew that it was an important car at the time. And then fast forward to like 2016, when I originally started working at AutoWorks, actually apprenticing him. I remember I got handed a repair order that said O2 M5, like in like the vehicle information segment, and I was like, this can't be like this. Like I was so excited, and then going out into the car for the first time, like shutting the door. I hadn't even turned it on yet, and I just like it truly was as special feeling of a car as I'd always imagined it would be. And so I'd driven several prior to owning one, but it's always been like kind of like one of my like pedestal cars that I've always wanted to own. And then when I started to tire my 2010 S4 quite a bit, I knew that I don't have much time left to get an M5.
Right, the prices are just going up.
The prices are just surging like crazy, and I really wanted a Mola Red over black heritage leather M5, and I ended up through making a internet friend, my friend Peter. I ended up actually sourcing this one.
So yeah, what year is it, and how long have you had it? And tell the story about like when you went to get it.
So it's a 2000 M5. So how I got it was I had actually befriended someone via like some of the Facebook groups I was in that had this car, and I was like, because I was wondering like, what are you doing with that? Because I knew he was probably trying to like fix it and flip it, and so we communicated for like probably almost 4 months until I finally like bought plane tickets to fly to Seattle, and then I flew out to Seattle and purchased the car, and I drove it across the country all the way home.
That's like every car guy's dream is to go, well, especially from the Northeast where cars were rotted out, is to go drive to like, California or Arizona or like somewhere where there's no rust, buy a car and then drive it back. That's like the ultimate like car guy. So how much time did it take you to get back?
About 3.5 days.
Yeah.
It was about 3,400 miles because our trip, we actually went to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho the first day because we had just flown in, we were tired, but wanted to get like one state, wanted to cross like one state boundary. And then from Coeur d'Alene, we went down to Wyoming, drove through Yellowstone National Park, like from like the south exit all the way to the north, and then continued through Montana.
That's such a cool scenic route.
Yeah, and then continued through Montana to South Dakota, stayed in Sturgis, which was pretty cool. It wasn't like bike week or anything like crazy like that, but it was still like it at the time. This was like spring of 2021. So it was like very COVID-y in most places, and it was like time traveling back to 2019.
Right. So was there pretty much no traffic at that point because of COVID?
Yeah, not a lot. Everything up to like Chicago was great. Like even in like Montana, like I had the cruise control set at 100 for like a solid 2 hours. Like I'm not even kidding. Like average speed of 90 plus the whole state.
So did you have any mechanical issues on the way back home?
I had no mechanical issues on the way back home. I was nursing a very small oil leak from the Vanos feed line, which it turns out tightening the central banjo bolt would have remedied that. But I didn't want to risk stripping the housing out, like say if it had like damaged threads. So I just like brake cleaned it and like nursed it on the way back.
So how much has the market increased since you bought the car? Like, do you think that you bought it at the right time compared to what they're going for now?
The market has been steadily increasing, like paying attention to like Bring a Trailer as of late. There's been a couple Imolas that have sold for over $50,000, but that had like a little bit lower mileage than this one did when I picked it up.
And not that like you really didn't even care much about resale value because it's not something you wanted to like flip or whatever. Like it was a car that you genuinely sought after and wanted, so you're not even really, it's not like you really care, but it's just interesting to find that you probably did buy it at the right time.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have much time left. It would have been a $50,000 endeavor instead of whatever you paid for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess you want to open the hood real quick and kind of just go over through some of the maintenance stuff that you did. So was there only one? There are 4 or 5 liter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's only one displacement. It's not like it changed in America, right?
Yep.
Like later on they had like a.
Yeah, the only change in the engines is the early production ones up until March of 2000 had looser fitting piston rings and they had oil consumption problems.
Okay.
And so they had a revised engine for April of 2000 production. This is a June 2000.
Yeah.
But also one thing that they did lack is the original engine, the ones that had the oil consumption problem, they had a aluminum plenum cover.
Yeah.
Whereas onwards they got plastic.
Yeah.
And so the aluminum plenum cover for like people that say go with forced induction and supercharge them, that's like a pretty sought after part.
Right, because they don't blow apart once you put some boost into them.
Yeah, the biggest issue is like if you shut the throttle really fast and get into the next gear while like in boost, it'll like
Right,
explode
it's like a
the
big
plenum
pressure
cover.
surge. And...
Yeah, that's like the big that's mainly the problem.
So how many miles are on it?
145,000.
Yeah, so it's
right now.
That's a good amount because it's not like it's sat. You know, it's not. If this car had 30,000 miles, there's probably a lot more work that you would have had to have done.
A lot of chasing oil
aged,
leaks.
Yeah, old rubber and plastics. And so what are some of the things you had to do maintenance wise?
So maintenance wise on this, so the only actual issue that I have had with the car mechanically was the thermostat was stuck open. And so I noticed like on the whole drive back that it did hang pretty cool.
So the gauge just didn't go up all the way to 10.
Yeah, and then it was like maybe like a week after having it home, I got a check engine light, and it was because it was for coolant temp low. Like it was like some like thermostat fault.
Yeah.
And so I just put a thermostat in.
So that's really the only thing that's actually like broke on the car.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you did, as preventative maintenance, you did the rod bearings because
Yep.
it is like it's not as big of an issue with these engines, right? Compared to S65 and S85.
The higher revving engines have a lot more problems with it,
Right.
but the S62, there still have been some that met their fate.
So you
because of
wanted
rod
to
bearings.
just take care of it, just so you didn't have to worry about it. So
Yeah.
how, what kind of endeavor was that for you? Like how much time did it take you? And
So the day I did it, it took me about 10 hours, but I think I could have shaved that down by a couple hours because like my father had stopped by and I like hung out with him, took him for a ride. And
yeah, so you're doing it at like a leisurely pace.
Very, very leisurely pace. It took me about 10 hours.
Yep.
Drove the car home that night. Like, wasn't really. It's really not a bad job if you can get the you take the subframe out and then upper lower oil pan and the oil pump and you're in. And then,
So, and how much money do you think you had to put into this, or not had to, but because there's only one thing that broke, but
Yeah.
how much money have you put into this since you've owned it, you think?
since I've owned it, mechanically, I have probably put, I guess probably around $2,000.
Yeah.
I reckon, something like that. And that's maybe including the cost of some tires.
Yeah.
So I had to put a lot of tires
That's
on
really
the car.
not bad if you think about
Yeah.
it. Like that's not terrible at all.
No, one of the excellent things I'm pretty grateful for is the timing chains and guides and clutch were all done at 100,000 miles in 2019.
So this was a pretty clean example rust-wise, but it kind of had like a difficult past, right?
Yeah, it's so like a fun part of the story with this car is it's actually effectively been totaled twice and been brought back from the dead.
Wait, so
Yet again.
it actually is a salvage title or no?
No, it is a rebuild title.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
which is why it was so cheap.
Right.
But
there was nothing structural that was damaged. It was just that the exterior damage amounted to so much that it totaled for the cost.
yeah, essentially. And if you have like poor insurance, like say if you have like not like Haggerty, but like more like out of the box like insurance.
Yeah.
That it's to them it's a 22-year-old BMW. It's not like it's not like a like a classic.
Yeah. So what's your end goal, or do you have any like near future plans for it?
So at the moment I have the headers and wheels for it on hand, custom set of OZs. But my biggest aspirations down the line would be possibly a shorter final drive ratio and a big brake kit, or maybe a supercharger. That's like the supercharger is like my ultimate pipe dream for the car, but I fear that it might add some complication to what is otherwise actually a very reliable car that takes a lot of abuse without seemingly breaking sweat.
Yeah.
So I'm a little skeptical of whether the supercharger I'd be able to enjoy the car the same.
Yeah. So I just wanted you to explain the significance of this car when it came out and how there was nothing else really like it. how like relevant it was with drivers' cars and sports cars at the time.
Because when this car originally came out in 2000, like this is like the first like performance sedan that had 400 horsepower, and like the first time an M5 had a V8 rather than an inline six, and there's really like nothing else like it on the market. Because Benz in '98 dropped the E55 AMG and the W210 chassis, which is a V8. It had like 330 horsepower,
but it was auto only,
automatic only. Like it paled in comparison to this car, and Mercedes had to go back to the drawing board for the supercharged E55 that came out in the W211 3 years later. But then like the Gen 1 CTSV was birthed in response to this car. The C5 RS6 was, I guess, Audi's like effective response to it.
But once again, that was more of a automatic focus on luxury as well as speed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't truly like, whereas like this was a car that was like, like a exclusively manual transmission, rear wheel drive only, like has a bespoke like racing inspired engine in it, not like something that's based on like something else from the production line. Like it really is a special car.
Right. That's an interesting thing, is that is there any other BMW that had this engine other than M5?
The Z8.
The Z8 is the only
Yep.
other.
The
Only other
Z8 is
BMW.
the Z8 is the only other car that shares this engine, but BMW in motorsports have used modified versions of this engine quite a bit.
For a while after it came out.
Yeah,
right?
up until like Turner Motorsport was using
Z4
S62s up until like 2018. But those engines had no Vanos. They revved over 8,000 RPM. So like obviously like different cams and stuff too.
So it was the basic construction of the engine, but that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
Like the block, the casting of the heads, but then it was a full like race motor.
The E46 M3 GTR, which had a V8, that was based on this, but it was actually a de-stroked like S62 variation.
So yeah, it's not only is it performance and luxury, but it's also like driver involvement and kind of like an analog. Like that's how they wanted it to be.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's still, despite being like a 4,000-pound sedan, maintains a very analog driving experience. That's like likened to say like an E36 3 Series or some of the older cars that BMW offers, where it's like even like E46 is still a very analog car, but like everything that followed is gotten substantially number and less involvement for the driver. Whereas this car is still, despite being like quite heavy and loaded with like luxury features and tech for the time, it was still a very involving driver's car, which is part of why it's heralded as the greatest sports sedan of all time.
see how we avoided that cliche, cheesy phrase, this ultimate driving machine?
Yeah.
Like that's but it's real, it's legit. Like it's a joke now what their cars are now. They're not the ultimate maintenance headache machine, but this definitely was like that. There was a reason that they had that kind of buzzword sales phrase.